have the opportunity, I did want to have the opportunity to share what I would call our story, which is the story of the Florence 1 School District, which is one of those stories I think that when I first came here and arrived, I talked about we don't really do a good job of telling our story. We allow other people to tell our story of who we are and what we're about and what we're trying to accomplish. So I hope tonight that we will begin to share with you, and I like to give out my presentation rather than have it up or anything so you can take it with you and ask me any questions and things like that. So I won't go through every slide, but I want to kind of go through where we are as a school district after completing 1 year and how far we've come, and our story from being labeled as a school district in what President Obama called a corridor of shame to, I believe, as you'll see on the last slide, to a school district that'll be the new light for the I-95 corridor. And I think in just 1 year, as you'll see, we've made tremendous strides to raise expectations in all different areas. So many of you know that you have to have a vision. I'm not really big on strategic plans and all those things that sometimes sit up on a shelf and things like that, but we had to have a vision. Our vision talked about where we wanted to be Florence 1 in 2021 on that page, and we really focused on 4 major goals to try to improve our school district. It was engaging the community a lot more to find out what we're doing, and I think, and hopefully, not only events like this, but through social media, through many different ways that you're learning a lot more about our school district. I will have to say that the morning news does a great job of covering the school district and the things that are going on, so we really have enjoyed that. But social media is another good way to do that. I mean, everything on a Sunday night, we do 60 seconds in Florence 1 for the week. It kind of just real quick and captures all the things, and I think that's sort of the thing that we're trying to accomplish. All of our schools are doing great things, and that's what we're trying to build as a school system. So we've tried to do that. My thing and why I'm here and what I am set out to do is improve student achievement. That is the #1 goal, and these goals are in no order, but that is my #1 goal in trying to improve student achievement for all students. And I think in year 1, you'll see in a couple minutes we've done that. Our facilities, as you're very much aware of, and our security are 2 things that we're working on. And hopefully you'll see that, although we did have a failed referendum, I think over the course of this presentation and some other things, you'll see that we are chipping away at some of those things to try to improve on that and do as much as we can without going to the taxpayer for any increases that we have to do, and hopefully you'll see that later on. And then most importantly, I can't do any of this without a staff and support staff that make all this happen. And I think that's one of the things that we're really trying to work on in the school district is not only to attract the best, but retain the best that we already have here. And both of those are very hard to do in South Carolina. We hired 353 new staff members this year. That's an awful lot. And then when you put it into perspective that 55% of our staff currently working for us has worked in our district less than 5 years. And so that really begins to be about what we can do to keep our staff and retain our staff. So we have a student body of about 16,000 students. That's important because over the last 6 years, we've lost about 100 students every year. In some years, 2 years ago, we lost over 200 students. So we've been on the decline. This is the first year that we've actually seen an increase in our students, mainly, which is more importantly for us, in the secondary level. We lose a lot of students in that middle school time frame, and this is the first year we will graduate. This year's 8th grade will have more graduates than the high school graduates. We have about 1,259 to about 1,000 students. So that's exciting for us that we have that. Over 90 new students from the private schools, homeschooling, have come to us this year. So we're really making an impact on making sure that our district is growing and prospering through that. We have about 52% African American, 40% Caucasian, and there's about 8% other, but that 8% continues to grow. Hispanic, Asian are increasing at a rate far more than the other two. So that's something that we have to look at. We have 37 different languages. I come from a school district that was one of the most diverse in the country. It had 97 different languages. So just in Florence, everyone tends to think of Florence as me, but we have 37 different languages that are spoken. Second largest employer, and we have about a $154 million budget. And I think that's important because everything I'm going to talk about this evening, we have the exact same budget as we did a year ago. And that, I think, is in itself, when you think about that, and I'll say that again at the end of my presentation, the exact same dollar amount as we did a year ago, and look at all the things that we're doing. When we talk about our personnel, I talked about we have about 2,300 staff members, the second largest employer in Florence County. Approximately 1,300 of those are certified staff, and so we really have a lot to deal with, but in order to try to retain and attract new employees, I think we put some incentives that are very interesting that some of our employees, some that are here this evening, have taken advantage of. And the first one was any employee in our district that has a 3 or 4-year-old, and I got to see a couple of them early this evening, they come to our preschool for free. And so that's a really good incentive. One, as a parent, you understand preschool is not cheap, and that's a couple $1,000s, if not more, in someone's pocket that they have. And they're coming to our preschool with our teachers and getting that education that they can believe in. We offer free lunch on Mondays and Fridays, and by no chance that is not a coincidence. We realize I'm a big data person. We looked at our data and found that most of our substitutes were on Mondays and Fridays. So that's the best thing to do, is try to feed them on Mondays and Fridays. And I will tell you, just our initial things, it works. But they are taking off Tuesdays and Wednesdays now, rather, but we're going to work on that as well. Last year we initiated, and this year again, a perfect attendance award. And the previous year, we had 24 employees that received perfect attendance, and they had received about $200 for that perfect attendance. Last year, we did for just certified staff. We upped it to $2,000, and we had 278 employees. And that's a pretty significant number, given it is a very difficult thing to come to work every day, especially if you have children, you have other things going on. And so we're really proud about that. And we opened it this year to all employees in the district, so not just teachers. Whether you're a bus driver, custodian, food service, whatever it may be, we opened it to all our employees. And then finally, if we're going to be an educational institution, we need to also make sure that our staff is well educated. We put together last year a $50,000 pool of money for tuition reimbursement. This year we upped it to $100,000. That would be for any employee that wants to advance themselves in any way. And we think that's another way to try to keep and attract some of our employees. I would also begin to tell you that when we look at changing the direction of student achievement, we have to look at what we're offering. And if you can see on the subsequent pages, we have 47 new programs this year, 47. And there is a whole list of them that are on here. Just a couple I'd like to highlight for you is one of the things that we're trying to do is change the direction of student achievement. And in South Carolina, and I do my best not to go after those that work and make a living in Columbia in our legislature, but if you go out throughout our state, and regardless of the shiny buildings that you have or whatever the technology that you have, every school is teaching the same math, the same language arts, because the textbooks come from the state. I remember when I first started here, I asked the question, math is something that we need to change the direction of our district, and you'll see that is still the case. But when I asked when we could get new textbooks for math and go forward, they said, well, we can do that, but the state will do that in 2021. My kids can't wait to 2021 to change the direction. And so what we are doing now is investing in our own textbooks. We get credit at Columbia for that. But we've spent over $2.5 million just in this year's budget to buy new textbooks. And we now have a K through 12, both math and science curriculum. We're going to work on language arts and social studies as we go on. We purchased new books for world language. So we've made an investment not only in programming, but in textbooks and those things as well. And you'll see those things that are listed here. We've added more to our arts, whether it be a new TV studio in South Florence, whether it be our piano labs or guitar. We've invested in new art classes. We have investments in our AP classes. Currently this year, we'll start off with 6 new AP classes at Wilson. I should say 4 more for a total of 6. And then South Florence and West Florence both have 15. That's important because when you are looking for your child to go to college, like I am right now with a senior, one of the things that they ask for is your high school's profile. And what they're looking for now is that is your child taking the most rigorous courses that your high school or their high school has to offer. And in order for us to meet and compete against others, we have to make sure that we have and offer the most rigorous courses to our students. And some of those things that we're doing, and you can see in the subsequent pages on how we're trying to address those needs and increase our course load. One of the things that we're also working on is technology. If you think there's an achievement gap, not only in our district, our state, and our country, there's a very, very large technology gap in our country. So we put together an initiative called Imagine Forward, which is our technology initiative. It's to make sure all of our classrooms have the latest technology, and both our staff and our students have the latest technology at their hands. So this year we started off last year with that, but this year every student, all 16,000, have some kind of device that they bring to and from school, which is a pretty significant accomplishment. All of our classrooms, our elementary classrooms, have brand new smart boards. All of our high school classes have what you would call like a typical college classroom projection screen. So all of them have been updated with the latest technology, both for our staff and our students, and we're very proud of that. We've invested over $1 million in our infrastructure, which is all that stuff to make it all work, and that's really an important part. I will have to say, coming to this school district, and I've been in a few, and I would have to say our technology department is probably the best that I've ever been in. I'm very fortunate to walk into a group that know what they're doing, understand the vision, and make it all come to work for both our staff and students, so I'm very happy about that. All of our facilities now have digital cameras, so we can watch them from our phone or iPads or whatever, and anywhere we are in our schools or even at home. So we're really happy about our technology initiatives. Safety and security is a huge issue that goes on. It's probably, people always ask superintendents what keeps them up at night, and for me, it's security. And probably here in Florence, just because our buildings were built at a time with sort of the model that we're an open campus, that sort of warm weather California feel that we can just move about classrooms and be outside. Well, the world doesn't operate today like that. Everything should be inside and buckled down. So we really have to try to ensure that our physical plant is maintained the best we can. And so we've done a lot in that area. One of the first things I did, and one of the first hires I did, is the director of security. And we hired a Florence resident who is actually a former retired Secret Service agent. And he actually is good for our district because, and why I hired him is, he doesn't come from it from a school sense, he comes from it from a security sense. And he looks at things a little different than I would in a school and can take a look at that and notice where all our strengths and weaknesses. So we're excited about that. We have security guards in our secondary schools. We have SROs in our schools. We have metal detectors in our schools. We have all those things that you would expect to have in a secure, but really it comes down to ensuring that our students are safe, our doors are locked, and we are vigilant and watching what's going on, and that's what we're trying to do. And I think part of security that gets overlooked, but you hear a lot about, is mental health. And mental health is a big push across the country, but we are probably the only school district, at least our size, that has a school-based therapist in every single school. And that's pretty significant, and that's how strongly we feel about mental health and what we're doing and what we're committed to. Some of the other things that we talk about is discipline in our schools. I think that's one of the number one things I heard as I began my tour to start last year and talking to teachers and parents about discipline in our schools. So you can see we've had some significant drops in our discipline referrals, whether it be classroom disruptions. I hate this terminology, but that's what's in our system called attack on students. You and I would know it as fights or any kind of disruption in school. We had almost a 53% drop in our discipline in that area alone, which is pretty exciting. But with those things, there also come some things that are increasing, such as tobacco use and possession. Many of you are aware of this vaping epidemic that I call them these kids these days. It's been a long time since I've been a kid. I don't feel like, but this vaping epidemic of what they're doing is just taking off, and the addiction to nicotine is something that we're trying to handle in our schools and trying to address that. And then the one thing that really bothers me that we're really trying to make a dent in is our bus violations. We have to ensure that our bus drivers can take our students to and from school safely, and we can't have and afford to allow any of that discipline to occur on the bus. So we've really taken a hard stand. If you recognize, a couple weeks ago, the county sheriff stood with me at a press conference because we've had some students who think it's funny, quite frankly, to call in threats and say we're going to shoot up the school and do things on social media. The sheriff stood with me, and we are very, very adamant that two things are going to happen. One, they're going to be arrested. Two, they're going to be expelled from school. And both of those things have happened to 3 students in our district just in the first 22 days. And although it's a hard stand, the amount of resources, time, and effort that go into these things, and quite frankly, the amount of fear that goes into our community just by the thought of this is something that we need to stop. And I think we've tried to address that as well. But to get into some other things real quick, we've made some investments in both the arts and athletics, and you can see that in the one slide, which is on page 12. About $1.5 million investment in athletics and about $3 million. We have done simple things about just taking care of our fields, putting some paint on some things, and just trying to upgrade most of our facilities. And we've done that at just about every one of our high schools and our middle schools. We've had some major upgrades and continue to do that. We've invested in our arts, whether it be new programming, our teachers, the coursework. We also are replacing all the 3 auditoriums in all the high schools. Actually, I was at West Florence today, and all the seats are out. And someone said, when was the last time I think we actually changed the seats? And I think Gary would say maybe 50 years ago when those seats were actually put in the school. So it's a pretty exciting time to have all 3 spaces in the high schools renovated in all 3 high schools, which would be the auditoriums, the gymnasiums, and our library. So we're really excited about the importance in there. So turn to page 13, because to me this is really, as I put on the top, this is what counts the most. This is the accountability that not only I want to instill, but also throughout our school district. This is what defines good schools and good school districts from others. So that is our test results. Whether you like it or not, whether you believe in it or not, that is really not up to debate. This is the way real estate agents, the legislature, the people who give us money say whether we're a good school or not. So this is the rules. These are the times. But in our first year of taking a look at what we're doing, I'm glad and proud to say that we've had increases in every grade and in both subjects other than 3rd grade math across the district in every school. This is really significant for us because we put a lot of effort and a lot of time in trying to change the trajectory for that, and this is pretty significant. And on the next couple pages, you'll see some of the exciting things that are happening. In 2 of our schools on page 14, which are our 2 highest poverty schools, which is Timrod, which is also our year-round school, and then Wallace Gregg, which is probably our highest. They're around 92% free and reduced lunch, and about, we call them the 90-90-90 schools, about 90% African-American free and reduced. You'll see that we had significant gains in both of those schools. I'd really like, because it gets me really excited, Timrod has been unbelievable, and I'll talk about them right now and then afterwards. They had increases, and you can see double digits in every grade and in both subjects. And as you'll learn later on, and it's embargoed, but I really don't care. I'm going to say it because it's so exciting. So Timrod, and our state ranked each of our schools from unsatisfactory, below average to good to excellent, which is the highest that you could get. And Timrod, which was one of our lowest schools, actually for the first time went all the way to excellent for the first time. And so you're talking about reaching all kids and all students. We've really made a difference, especially in these two schools as well. As you turn the page, we tend to look at some of the accountability standards in our high school, and that's graduation rates. I will put a little disclaimer so everyone can understand this. It's not that 15% of our kids are dropping out of high school. The graduation rate in South Carolina is actually a math formula, I call it. It's not the kids who walk across the stage, or in this case, do not walk across the stage. It's actually based upon who started in ninth grade at that school and where they ended up. And if we're not accountable for where they go, whether it's North Carolina, Oklahoma, or whatever, they count towards us. So I want to put a little caveat on that. That is not what people think is just a pure dropout rate. It's much more of an intense mathematical. But you can see that in all three high schools, the state average is about 81%. We're about 80% in South Florence, 85% in West Florence, and Wilson was actually the highest at 85%. But Wilson High School had probably their highest graduation rate in 7 years, depending how far you go back. And we're excited about those. As you saw on that first page about our accountability, we want to be at 95%. That's going to be a huge thing to get to, but we're making great strides in moving that forward, and that's something that we are very happy about. The next page is really what I wanted to share with you. These results are embargoed, but as long as you don't share them with the media, and if I get in trouble for sharing good news, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So take a look at this. So this is the state's rating scale on how they do our schools. Last year, half of our schools, 11 of them, were either unsatisfactory or below average. 11 of them. This year, we have 1. I mean, that's a huge improvement. And that one school, just so you know, is 0.27 away from being average. Not a full point, not a half a point, but 0.27. And believe me, we are looking for 0.27 right now. So to go from half of your schools being on the bottom to almost none of your schools being there, and then having only one excellent school last year, and that was Royal, to having 4 schools, and 2 of those schools were on the bottom, is really what the changes we're trying to make. And I will put a little shout out to Royal. Royal Elementary, our preliminary numbers, is the highest scoring public elementary school in the state of South Carolina. So we really have not only pushed those on the bottom up, but even at the top continues to get better. So we're really excited about all those things that are happening. And that's the good news. Here's the bad news. The good comes with the bad. We really have to change the trajectory of our kids in high school. When we look at accountability in high school, we look at end-of-course tests that matter. That's in English and algebra. And you can see, although we're making great strides in grades 3 through 8, we have a long way to go in our high schools. And you can see more than 50% of our students in English and more than 75% in math are getting that D or F. That's sort of that grading. That's how they do it there. And so when we want to celebrate the good things, I want to tell you we still have a long way to go to make sure that our students are prepared for college and the world. And those results are something that not only are alarming but concerning, but we're trying to work on those as well. As you continue, we want to make sure that we offer a rigorous coursework for students, and that's all students. So when we look at AP courses, last year we had 188 students in our district that had AP classes. This year, 395, 110% increase. When we take a look at students that are African American, we had 36 students. Think about that. 36 in all 3 high schools that took an AP class. I had 3 at Wilson High School alone. 3. This year, we increased that number to 141. We are working with a group out of Seattle called Equal Opportunity Schools, and what they're trying to do and help us is to move more of our students, Hispanic, African American, Asian, to those higher level, whether it's honors or AP classes. and that's something we hope these numbers continue to increase. And you can see those increases also in the other area as well. When we look at our IB program, we've got probably one of the best IB programs in the state. We have surely one of the best IB coordinators, I think, in the state, in Mr. Howell. But we also want to give access to more students there. We've increased that by about 100 students. And you can see in both the middle school and the high school how we're trying to increase those numbers and provide access to many students. Again, trying to ensure that all of our students have access and want to be pushed, and somewhat we push to get students in those classes as well. So we're really proud of these results as well. So that's what's happening inside the classroom. Really quickly, as I wind down here, when the referendum failed, I stood at this podium, and I always got asked the question, what happens if it fails? What's your plan B? And I'll still stand by the statement that if you have a plan B, you really don't have a plan A. But once it did fail, we had to go back as a board, as administration, to say, okay, what can we do? And we really took some time to take a look at it. And one of the first things that we asked the board for this year is that we get what we call 8% money. That's what we can borrow based upon all of our assets without going to voters for approval. That's about $13 million for our school district, depending on the year, on those assets. And so what I asked, and that's what the board has been using in the past for the pay-as-you-go program to build those new schools. In lieu of that, we haven't done a lot of maintenance to our schools, and that is something that we asked the board, and they agreed to this year. So we're spending about $8.5 million across the district to upgrade our schools. It's approximately about $500,000 per school to do those things as replace bathrooms, lights, hallways, replace doors, which is also a safety issue, windows and things like that. And so I'm big, probably because I watch too much HGTV, I'm big on paint and some of those simple things to give some curb appeal. So you'll begin to see some of those things. I mean, we power washed West Florence High School this year, and I don't know if you'll notice, I noticed, but just those little things about what we're doing in parking lots and painting the signs and getting signs, just those curb appeal things really just show people that we care, not only about the outside, but also the inside and what's going on. And I think that's really the message that we're trying to send to do that. So we're doing all these things this year, which is exciting. Some of the other things that are part of our plan is we also have what we call a downtown plan. And so we received money in the past from the city of Florence to renovate the old McClellan High School. And so we're starting that. That process is ongoing. We expect to have that started somewhere late fall, hopefully before the holidays. There's a lot of permitting and things going on right now that you don't see that are happening. So we're excited about that. We purchased the what they call the old library, which is on Irby Street, and that'll be the new home for our current administrative building, which is on South Dargan. So the South Dargan administration building will go to the new library. Those administrators and adult ed will come over to the current South Dargan until McClellan is finished. Once McClellan is finished, all Pointer will move then over to McClellan, and that will house all administration, adult ed, and community ed as well. In the meantime, while you purchased the library, is we'd like to get started on the Pointer building as well, which we are going to create a magnet high school for the medical arts. Having two high schools here, two medical hospitals here, really I think we're the hub of what we can offer our students. So we're excited to begin the prospect of putting a magnet high school for the medical arts and bring students downtown to Florence that haven't been there in over 50 years. And so that's our sort of downtown plan. And then finally, the board said, well, that's all great, we're moving and that's great, but here's the next challenge for you to solve. We'd like to get to a middle school concept, and for the sake of this presentation, that's putting 6th through 8th grades together in one building. There's a lot of educational stuff that goes along with that, but that's really what that middle school concept means. And so we want to do that, and we want to retire as many mobiles in the district as possible. If you, like I, aren't aware of all the mobiles that are in this district, it is unbelievable regarding the amount of mobiles that are in our schools. So that's a significant thing. And they basically said, that's great, you can do that, but there's no more money, and you've got to use the current facilities that you currently have, let's see what you can do. And so that put into place another thing, which was how do we also engage what the board called phase 2 of their pay-as-you-go plan, which is paying for basically a school with cash before you start to build. And so we've been looking at our finances as well, and we figured out a way that we could build a new Southside, which is the first school under the pay-as-you-go. The second one would be Williams Middle School, and then the third would be Savannah Grove, using our fund balance and then $5 million of our 8% money over the course of the next 3 years. Because when you're building a new school, when you're only building one, it's a lot easier to manage that because you don't need all the money up front. But the way I'd like to do it is I'd like to know where all the money is, at least 90% of it is, before we start going. So we are in the process of selecting construction and architects for that. We hope to have that before the conclusion of school ends to get that going, so we're excited about that. That school is going to be approximately about 1,200 students. When that school, which will house 6th through 8th graders, is complete, elementary schools like Greenwood, Dewey Carter, Savannah Grove, those 6th graders will come out of those schools. Those schools will be K-5, we'll get out of the mobile business in those elementary schools, make them more secure, and then we'll have a school built in the South Side for the first time in a long time as well. And so with that, we also want to change Sneed Middle School and more to middle schools, housing 6th through 8th as well. That means we would get the 6th graders out of Briggs, which would get them out of mobiles, and that would be a K-5 school, and then the 6th graders out of Royal, and that would be a K-5 school as well. Briggs would get out of mobiles. Many of you know Royal is a new school, so we don't have mobiles there, but it would be a K-5 school. And then we would be, 3 of our 4 schools would be in a middle school concept, getting out of the mobile business and getting us into a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 configuration as we move on. Then the final phase is Williams Middle School. Williams Middle School will not be built until the completion of Southside, and then 5 years after that. People say, why 5 years? Well, if you actually do it correctly and you do pay-as-you-go, if you put $6 million away every year, the 8%, it'll take you about 5 years to just get to $30 million, or somewhere along those lines, and that's why it would go along that way. But if we could use our current facility, we have what we call the Rush Academy, which is our alternate school. Sort of has 2 components to it, those students who have some difficulties in our high school, but also those students who don't want to be in a big high school or just want an alternate path. Cedric Kennedy is our principal there, who's done an amazing job of getting kids graduated and getting them in programs. We have about 110 kids in that program. But that facility actually can house 869 students. So we're hoping to find a new home for our alternate school, utilize that Rush Academy for the Williams Middle School until a new Williams Middle School can be built. That would get Timrod, Wallace Gregg, and Lester all out of the mobiles, make them K-5s, and have another 6 to 8 middle school until then we can do, as well as North Vista. I forgot North Vista, the 6th graders can go to that school as well. And so that is sort of the plan. As you probably have heard, we've been going around the schools and having people give us some questions. The board calls it their listening tour, and really it is about formulating questions that we need to answer and how we would put that and when we would put that into going into place. But that would hopefully solve that problem to go into a middle school concept, get us out of mobiles, K-5 configuration. And then there's just a few other schools. If you think about the referendum, the high schools, the career center, and there's one elementary school, which is McLaurin, which we still don't fit into this plan. Part of the problem with McLaurin is it has more mobiles than South Florence. And so when you think about 14 to 16 mobiles, that would be an addition of about $21 million. That's not something that we can actually put into the plan right now, but maybe down the road is what we're looking for, and then the career center. So those schools are the ones that aren't included in this whole plan, but it's something that we put forward that we think we can move forward with using our current facilities and our current dollars to make sure all this happens. So I think I probably went over my time, but we really feel that in just 1 year, as the last slide sort of says, is we're trying to change the narrative of our school district of that corridor shame to being the lighthouse of what we're trying to do. And I think just in 1 year and some of the results that matter, we've really changed the direction of our school district. And again, our staff has to take credit for it. It was this crazy guy from New Jersey that came that doesn't just stop pushing to challenge every expectation. And many times last year people were breaking, but I kept trying to keep them focused that at the end you will see the results, because no matter where you go, people have said over the years it just can't happen. And quite frankly, people just said it's not going to happen in Florence. That's just not Florence. But I'm here to change that expectation, and I can guarantee you everyone likes being on a winning team. And so we're building that winning team here in Florence, and I think some of these results really share in what we're trying to accomplish moving forward. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I guess if there's time, I can answer any questions that anyone might have on this or anything else.
Let me say this publicly. I know people have questions a lot